I am Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She is the author of the book Overcoming Writer's Block, no other than Ms.Marcy Pusey. Welcome to Book 101, Miss Marcy, and can you please introduce more about yourself?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. Marcy Pusey, I've written about 22 books and counting. Most of them are award-winning and best-selling, and as a result of the years I spent learning how to write well and get books published, I also run a business helping people do that as well. So I run a company called Mira Mare Ponte Press, where I help writers tell their stories and get those stories into the world. I've had the chance to give 2 TEDx talks. One of them, the first one specifically, is also on story and the impact of the brain on story and the story on brain, because my background is all in therapy, counseling, trauma, and resilience. And I get to bring that into my work with writers and into my own work as well.
Miss Marcy Pusey, award-winning and best-selling author. Thank you so much for sharing your talents to the world. Yes, and we encourage you to do more and more and more empowering books. So, what are the common psychological barriers that lead to writer's block, and how can they be overcome?
Yeah. So in the book specifically that you've shown the cover of, I've got it here to a different cover, but same book. Oh, yep, Overcoming Writer's Block. Um, I take all of my many years working with authors, coaching authors, doing story coaching and editing and speaking and all of the things. I take all of that and I put it into this book specifically. I wanted to be able to help more people than just whoever was on the call with me. And so this became a way that I could send a piece of myself to go be in the pockets and on the desks of other writers as well. And so some of the main blocks that I talk about in there, you mentioned psychological, there's mental, there's all logistical scarcity. There's all kinds of different blocks that people face, but the gist of what we would call writer's block is, right, the inability or the sense of an inability to get words on a page. And or for some people, so many words, they're not sure if those words are good and they don't know how to move forward. And so a block doesn't just mean a lack of, it can mean an abundance of, but the progress is what is inhibited. And so I love helping authors work through what those specific blocks are to them. It's very individual, person to person, why they're being brought up in somebody's life as they're working on writing. But yeah, they can be things like belief and mindset. I don't have what it takes. I'm not a good enough author. I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe, kind of that impostor syndrome too. Like I'm a fraud. I just, whatever it might be. For some people, it's just actual logistics. I have a lot of older authors that I work with who don't know the technology and don't want to know the technology and just need help overcoming those kinds of barriers. For some, it's attentional. I'll call them like attentional blocks, like just dealing with the distractions that come up and keeping focus. And so you get a lot of people who are struggling with just that, being able to put their butt in the chair and do the work of writing. But I would say all of it starts in our brain in some capacity, which maybe sounds so simple, but understanding sort of how the brain is responding to the work that we're doing is what helps me to help people recognize what block is impacting them at any given moment.
Beautifully articulated, Miss Marcy. Very well said. So, how does publishing a regular writing routine help reduce the likelihood of experiencing writer's block?
Yeah. So our brain loves the act of autopilot, right? Anything that we can do out of habit means that our brain doesn't need as much energy to do the thing. And it really wants to reserve energy in case we're in a life or death situation, and it needs to expend that energy to keep us alive. So the more that we create habits and patterns in our lives, the more that we're supporting that desire of our brain to work in a kind of flow state. By having a kind of writing ritual, we're creating that pattern and habit. And that can look different from person to person. For example, some people love to wake up in the morning when it's quiet and before everyone's awake and get writing done. My brain does not think that's fun at all. My brain is like, why are you awake? We should be sleeping and resting. And so that's not going to be ideal for me, right? I might work in bursts where someone else will say every day at 5 o'clock a.m., I sit and work on my book. But by creating cues in our life, in our writing habits, we can create some of that autopilot. So other ways that I talk about routines might be having a special candle that you only burn when you're writing, and your brain begins to recognize, oh, that smell, I only smell when we're being creative, so let's just be creative. Like it wants to
Yes.
get right into that flow. So it might be something like that. It might be where you choose to work. Oh, every time we sit in this spot, we are being creative, so our brain goes, great, let's get into that flow. So we can shorten the time between sitting down and finding the focus when we give our brain those cues to let it know what's happening next. And then, like I said, it wants to save the energy of figuring it out and doing something new. And so it's going to just eventually get right into the flow with us and take us there more quickly. And so it's a really powerful and important thing that we can do to support ourselves. And again, I think this is important. It's not going to look the same as everyone else's ritual. It shouldn't, and that's okay. It should be unique to you. But having some kind of ritual is really supportive to your brain working for you as you sit down to write.
Certainly. So, what specific techniques can writer use to jumpstart creativity when feeling stuck?
Yeah. Oh man, there's a lot of things. So this can vary across genre a little bit. So if I'm thinking of fiction, one of my favorite things to recommend is pausing to do like a character interview, right? Sitting down and saying, okay, if I'm feeling stuck, what can I do to get to know my characters a little better so that I would understand what they would be doing in this situation? So that might be, you can Google them. I think I've even got one somewhere that I usually share with people where they're asking their character questions, just like, okay, what's your favorite pizza? And then just writing down the first thought that comes to mind. And it can be really simple questions or dumb questions that you'll never use in the book, but it gets you into the head of your character, which can then unlock for you what they're doing in a particular situation. So I think character interviews are a lot of fun. If it's something more nonfiction, depending on what's causing the block, will determine what to do about it. But sometimes we just need to fill our own creativity tank again. We're pouring out, but we're not filling up. And so that might be putting on some music that just really is life giving to you, or you like inspires you, right? Getting, like, I call them art dates. So you're giving yourself an opportunity. For some, it might be visual, like, man, I just need to go to the museum or an art gallery and just really appreciate the fine art that someone else has done. Might be reading someone else's book. Could be going out into nature, into creation, and experiencing the natural elements and seeing the art that's there. So sometimes we have to step away from being creative and fill our soul and our spirit and our mind and our body with art from other places in order to fill that tank so that we can begin to pour out again. There's so many ways, like this book has all the ways that I recommend doing it.
Yes.
Those are just some of the things
Lots.
that if you're feeling stuck, I guess I'll add one more. Um,
Yes.
when I think of finding ourselves resisting, like, why do I just keep avoiding sitting down to do this writing that I have? It's often connected to some place of fear that's internal. We may not recognize it as that. It might just seem, no, I'm just busy. I'm too tired. Man, my baseboards are really dirty. I should clean them. But if we're recognizing this resistance to actually sitting out down and doing it, that's when I begin to poke at why is that? What's going on? What underlying fear might be there? Is it, I'm getting closer to finishing writing this book and then I don't know what to do next. It's all a big unknown, and that is scary. So sometimes the fear of that unknown will actually cause us to like kind of sabotage and resist finishing. For some, it's a fear of success. Oh my gosh, when I get it out there, what if it does really well and my life changes? I had an author say that one day. I love my life. I don't want it to change. And so we talked through like what it would look like to still be in control of her life, even if the book goes out and just, changes the world and has this huge amount of impact where everybody wants her time and attention. The fear can be all kinds of things. It can be connected to childhood stuff. I had one author who was super stuck on writing a children's picture book. And as we met and talked, it was because it ended up being that she was putting her character through a situation very similar to what she had experienced as a child, a bullying situation.
Mhm.
And her nervous system wouldn't do it. It was like, we are not going to relive that painful experience we had as a kid by talking about it with this character. And as soon as she realized that, we did some work together around facing it and healing from it. She was able to write the best draft she had ever given me for this book. And so all kinds of underlying things can be root causes to the resistance that we're feeling. But those are some of the main ones that I see come up, right? Is some kind of fear that's leading to resistance. We need to fill our creativity tank, or we need to, I don't remember the other suggestions they gave already, but those are the two main ones. You can read the book to
Too
get all the
many.
rest. Yeah.
Yes, people. So, Miss Marcy, how can writers use journaling or free writing exercise to overcome the fear of blank page?
Oh, that's so good. I have a program that I call, actually I have two, but one is called Start Your Story. And I have a pre-recorded version that's available, but sometimes I'll do a live version. But basically I walk people through how do you actually start a story? Like not just sit down and start it, but also what's the beginning of a story like? Because sometimes people are just stuck on that. Like I know what I
Yes.
want the whole story to be. I'm stuck on like just starting. And then I also cover like how do you get started? And I do a little exercise to your question at the very end where I give them 5 minutes. I surprise them and I give them 5 minutes to just write at anything. I've done this live like with women in recovery. I did this recently. Where I just was like, surprise, here's a pen and paper. I want you just to write anything that comes down over the next 5 minutes. And if you're not sure what to write, I want you to write that. Marcy's making me write for 5 minutes and I have no idea what to write, but here I am with a pen in my hand putting down words. And as you do that, you're tapping into the brainstem, into an important part of your brain that we often don't listen to very well. It doesn't have access to the language center that I'm using to have this conversation with you. It tends to use our bodies and somatic things to let us know what's going on. So sometimes that can be actual just sensations in our body. Sometimes it can be our heart rate, our breathing changing. It can be our eyes twitching, right? It can be how we sleep. There's a lot of things. And the way that we can listen is by doing those somatic activities. So you get people out there doing yoga or equine therapy, right? Where they're out there with a horse or being out on the trail or whatever it might be, some kind of body movement. Well, writing, especially if we're handwriting, though we can still tap into this part of our brain on a computer, that really activates this part. And as we free write, now we're listening instead of telling. And that's the difference between what you and I are doing, right? I'm telling you, as opposed
Yes.
to listening. So when we journal and we allow that free writing, we're actually listening to that part of our brain. And if we will open the door, even if it's just Marcy's making me write, or I'm trying to make myself write to get unblocked, you
Mhm.
will find that your brain will settle into a flow and begin to tell a story or begin to share something that matters. And you might be surprised by what that is. Because again, we're listening. We're not controlling what we're saying. We're just writing. That becomes like, oh, I had like such the metaphor that came to mind was like it's like popping a pimple, right? Like
Yes.
it's just, I'm not suggesting we do that. It's a gross metaphor. But the point being, right? So there's all this tension and pressure that's happening in our brain, in our mind, in our heart, in our body that we don't usually address until we sit and listen. Maybe it's more like letting air out of a full balloon. Just be a little less gross. But the act of
Certainly.
free writing gives relief to that part and allows us to hear ourselves uniquely. And it's so powerful. So not only are you doing something so good for your own like mental health, but you're also going to be surprised by what comes out of you and how that will unlock you to write, even if you're writing something totally different and you're stuck on something totally different. Just letting yourself sit there to journal and write, it will unlock that in you.
Certainly. Empowering answer, Miss Marcy. Empowering. I hope people will learn from it. So why is it perfectionism is frequent cause of writer's block, and how can writers address it effectively?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I love this question. And the reason is because I have a really high value for the uniqueness of people.
Yes.
Perfectionism is usually an idea that something is supposed to or should be a certain way. And we get locked in and boxed in to that idea that if what I'm producing doesn't look like that, or how I'm producing it doesn't look like that thing, that somehow I'm failing. And then again, if we go back to our brains, the sensation that we're failing is not an exciting, fun sensation. Our brain is going to resist the sense of failing. We're going to want to run from that. And so we need
Yes.
to set ourselves up for actually more curiosity and exploration of ourselves and what works for us, as opposed to trying to be rigid about what this perfection is. And even recognizing like who established this idea that this qualifies as perfect. And what I'm finding too in this society, and Daniel, if you hear or see anything different, I'd love your thoughts, but on readers are less interested in all of your credentials and which
True.
textbooks you've read and what degrees you have. They want to know if you're human and if you relate to them in some way. This
True.
is true in fiction. It's true for adults. It's true for children. It's true for nonfiction. It doesn't matter. We want to know, have you lived anything like my life and can you help me or entertain me or whatever it might be? And so I actually find that perfection is not as relatable as the real life story, even if it's a little bit messy. So I'm kind of diverging now into two directions. So I'm going to say on the front end, as a writer, learning who you are and what works for you is the path to your kind of perfect. If you're trying to be someone else, produce like someone else, write in the way that someone else writes, you're not being you. You're not being authentic to you. It's going to be a struggle the whole time. But if you learn, oh man, I do my best writing at midnight. And if everyone says that's the worst time to write, but it works for you, then do what works for you. So I think the idea that I have to be perfect is always about someone else's expectation or your own like self-established expectation that's unrealistic. And if we can set that aside and see it again, I'm going to say from a place of curiosity and exploration, we're unlocked. Like I'm not failing all the time. I'm discovering. And it's a really beautiful thing. And then in that journey, as we give ourselves permission to create imperfect but authentic work, we're actually going to find that our readers are far more drawn to that and excited about that than a perfectly polished, shiny product anyway.
Certainly. So, Miss Marcy, what would be your advice for those people out there who want to write their book?
Start. Start and then
Now,
contact me. Yeah,
yes,
I mean, so I think it is helpful to start with where you are. And so for most people, I really genuinely would say start writing. In fact, I was just coaching an author today who said, like, I don't even know if I'm doing it right, but I didn't know what to do. So I just started writing. And I was like, that's exactly what I would tell you to do.
true.
Start writing, get your ideas down. We can't edit something that's not on a page. You can't make decisions about something that's not on a page. You've got to begin to get it down. And so for some people, I say that and they're like, oh, great, that's easy. I'll just start writing. For some people, they might be thinking, like my friend who was a nurse who said to me, Marcy, I would rather throw up than write. And then I'm like, well, I would rather probably throw up than poke people with needles. Like she's a nurse. So that's why we're all different and have the roles that we have on this earth. So for those people too, I say then find someone who can help you with that. If you've got a message to share, whatever it is, it doesn't mean you have to sit down at a desk and type things out. I have another author that I've been coaching where her perception is that she's a much better verbal communicator than a writer. And so we meet and I interview her and I record our conversations and transcribe them as they're recorded. And she's writing her book by having a conversation with me. So she's not that typical, like I'm sitting at my desk writing, but she is writing her book. We're doing it uniquely in the way that is most in alignment with who she is and how she functions. Right. This book, actually, my mom had just had knee surgery, and I was
Yeah.
driving an hour
Mhm.
both directions to help her get to appointments and go to the grocery store and all of these kinds of things. And so I couldn't sit at my desk as much as I normally do. I love to be at the desk writing. So I ended up like telling myself, saying it out loud and recording myself for many of the chapters, transcribing those, and then going through and writing them, like editing the transcriptions. And that was out of my normal comfort zone, but it was the season of life I was in. So I think to summarize that again, I would say get started and then find the person who can help you get started if that sounds really hard. So in my case, maybe that's the coaching, or, some people just need validation around their story idea. It might be a program like I run, like Start Your Story, or I have one that's the 5-day picture book challenge where we write a picture book together over 5 days in increments, right? So just knowing your next step. And if you don't know how to do the next step, finding someone who does and letting them support you. And then you'll be unstoppable.
Certainly. Call Ms. Marcy.
That's all me.
And thank you for your advice. So, what will be your short term and long term goals as a writer?
Yeah. There's a great quote by an author, Flannery O'Connor, and it's something to the effect of, I write so that when I read what I've written, I understand what I'm thinking. And that so resonates with me as an author that I'm processing my world when I write. And then as I reread what I'm writing, I'm like, oh, I get it now. So that has been so crucial to my own just personal development. And I'd say healing from some hard life traumatic things. And so my personal goal would be to continue that, to be always aware that maybe something I'm experiencing could be of value to somebody else. So not just is it helping me understand myself, but this understanding that I'm gaining, does this also help anyone else? And most of my books, that's what I'm doing. I'm like, hey, does anyone else think this is hard? By putting it, and then the people read the book and they're like, oh my gosh, me too. Yeah, I didn't know.
Yes.
I thought I was the only one. So there's two parts there. I hope to continue the personal journey of just self-discovery and the therapeutic work it is for me to write and tell my stories, whether they're fiction or nonfiction, adult or children. I've written for everybody, but also to continue to provide spaces in the world where underserved, underrepresented, not frequently seen people would feel seen and represented and resonate because I'm being brave to share my piece of the story. And so I want everyone to feel a place of belonging and safety and acceptance that, yeah, we're all on this life doing the thing that we're just trying to figure it out. And then my greatest joy would be if they would also then feel inspired and brave enough to share their story somewhere too. Even if it's not a book, like it can be over tacos with a trusted friend. You're sharing something you've never shared, or just dipping your toes in. So for some people, that might end up being from a stage speaking. For someone else, it might be through puppet shows, right? It might be dance for somebody else. We can tell our stories through music. There's so many ways, but I would hope that by putting my stories out there, being authentic and real, that people would again feel seen, but then also feel brave and courageous enough to tell their story and provide that same kind of belonging space for someone else.
Good luck to your goals, Miss
Thank
Marcy, and hoping for more empowering books to come.
thank
So
you.
before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, Food 101, and its fifth season, people, fifth season, with Chef Alessandro, one of the executive chef in one of the five-star hotel in downtown Toronto. So please do listen to our latest episode. We are reading our letter senders all over the world. So, Ms. Marcy, what role does physical exercise or movement play in rein- re-energeting or make your body energized in creativity and combating writer's block?
Yes. So that taps into what I was saying a little bit earlier about the somatic part of listening to our body and then responding, and how people will try different activities. And so that is one of the ways, is just learning to listen and then respond and being one, like mind, spirit, body, and soul, which we are not really taught to do here in our Western culture, or at least even, North America very well. I think there's more conversation, but also just blood flow is so good for
Yes.
moving the oxygen around our brain. If we want our brains to produce for us, not just in our writing, but in life, we need to keep it healthy and flowing. And so body movement is so good for helping that oxygen travel around our body, our blood flow travel around our body. And then it also changes our own perception of ourselves. It's really interesting psychologically how, if you go for a walk, people can then look in a mirror and go, wow, I look great, because you took care of yourself. And somebody who maybe looks great all the time for whatever reason I'm probably jealous of might not see that in the mirror if they're not doing the activity, because the perception is, right, that, oh, I'm not taking care of myself, therefore I'm whatever, fill in the blank. And so it impacts our self-perception, but it's also just generally healthy for our body. So if we want it to do work for us, we've got to take care of it and nurture it. And one of the ways we can do that is moving it, right? And then being in nature is like a whole other level. I mean, for sure, get on a treadmill, go to a gym, do that work. But if you can get in nature and move, there's a whole different element of the grounding, right? That the earth gives us, that being in nature, that hearing nature sounds gives us, that is so profound, the impact on our brain. And so I know that was kind of a big answer, like, just, but yeah, go out and move, get out in nature and move your body. It's
Yes.
not going to hurt your writing at all.
Definitely. Move it,
Move it.
people. Miss Marcy Pusey, thank you so much for sharing your talents to the world. And we are looking forward for more and more and more empowering books to come. So kindly please invite our listeners to support all your books as well as your business.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me here and doing this for us. I'm on Amazon. I'm where books are sold, marcypusey.com. And then I do offer a free strategy call to anyone who's interested in getting their story into the world as well. And so we'll make sure, if there's show notes, that we have the links there. But if you just search me, Marcy Pusey, on Google, I will pop up.
Yes, totally agree. And people, let's support Miss Marcy Pusey, because if you support her, as I said, more and more coaching to come, more and more empowering books to come. So, Miss Marcy, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Bodycom people, see you soon.